In May 1942, the Chinese-British Joint Army in Burma was defeated. The Japanese army took control of Burma and the British army retreated to India. In July 1942, the German-Italian Joint Army surged across North Africa and reached El Alamein in Egypt, just 350 kilometers from Cairo. In May 1943, Germany established a submarine base in Malaysia. This base was the keystone of a strategic naval alliance with Japan. Germany and Japan agreed that the two countries would use long-range submarines to attack Allied shipping on the high seas, and they demarcated 70 degrees east longitude as the dividing line of their spheres of influence. If this plan were to be implemented, then not only would Germany and Japan be genuine partners, they'd also gain control of Mid-East oil and cut off oil shipments to Britain and the Soviet Union. As well as this, they would gain control of important strategic resources in Southeast Asia, such as rubber. Once Germany and Japan were connected by a sea lane, the major problem confronting the Axis powers was British control of India. It was the only country in Asia that the UK was able to hold.
The enemy swept on to central Burma.
Because the Chinese-British Joint Army had been defeated the year before in Burma, which bordered on India, Japan now controlled Burma completely and could use it to launch an attack on India at any time. As the Allied army was in a precarious position, the US gave China much-needed supplies in order to keep the Japanese forces busy. About 80% of the Japanese land army was mired down in China, thereby making it much easier for the Allies to take on Japan in other theaters of the Pacific War. At the same time, the Chinese army that had retreated from Burma to India trained there for a year in preparation for retaking Burma and fighting their way back to China.
我们训练的也很严格，那就是一天上午2个钟头的队列训练，然后有2个钟头的这个课堂，就是射击教练啊这些，步兵操练等等嘛，就是这些类的。然后就是，我下午整个下午就是野外训练。
你那个利用体型体物了。 啊，代表你在现在利用你的水，或者利用你的水，啊，你代表我烟火到你前进，你烟火到我前进。同学讲，放到也到了利用体系的我呢，代表这里有个混队，利用混队了，这里有个小拖队，利用就拖队了，或者有点水就利用水了，看见么利用么个哪一个可能利用，你就利用哪样。
训练使用新式武器，那时新式武器包括3.5步枪、60炮、冲锋枪、火箭筒、战防枪，这些都是当时的最新的武器。
中国、美国、英国3个国家在南木家支持祖国司令，中国国师。 美国国师、英国国师控制阴阳形势，抗国国3个国家算是在日本一直在日本时间攻打皇宫面。
A year earlier, American General Joseph Stilwell and Chiang Kai-shek had agreed on a plan, codenamed Anakim, A-N-A-K-I-M, to retake all of Burma. Stilwell hoped to attack Burma from India, with the British Army as the main force and American and Chinese forces in support. They would then hook up with a Chinese force of 12 divisions attacking from western Yunnan, then turn south and attack the Burmese capital of Rangoon. Anakim was dedicated to avenge the sacrifice of 60,000 soldiers of the Chinese expeditionary forces the previous year. as well as the death of several thousand servicemen at Pearl Harbor 2 years earlier.
I claim we got a hell of a beating. We got run out of Burma, and it's humiliating as hell. I think we ought to find out what caused it, go back and retake the place.
General Stilwell was the American Army commander in the China-India-Burma theatre, and he was Chiang Kai-shek's chief of staff. However, he did not have absolute authority in the theatre of operations. His job was about to become even more difficult. Military commanders must answer to their government superiors. Roosevelt, Churchill and Stalin each had their own overall plans. Chiang Kai-shek was willing to launch a counter-offensive, but in order for this to happen, the British Army would have to cooperate fully. After losing more than half of his crack expeditionary force in Burma, he wanted strong backing before committing to a counter-offensive that had no guarantee of success. However, Prime Minister Churchill had little interest in the Far East theatre. He advocated putting more resources into the North African campaign in order to take the war in the West to Germany's Axis partner, Italy. Stalin, on the other hand, was completely focused on Germany. He felt that once Germany was defeated, Japan wouldn't dare attack the Soviet Union. In Roosevelt's mind, the European War was exactly that, just a war. The Asian War fell into the same category, but it was somewhat different in that the Americans wanted revenge for the attack on Pearl Harbor. A practical matter made the counter-offensive against Burma extremely urgent. China had a critical shortage of supplies. All of China's stockpiles of supplies had been used up during the many years of the War of Resistance against Japanese aggression. The domestic situation, meanwhile, made it impossible for any supplies to enter the country from abroad.